This is a CBS News special report. I'm Gail King with Anthony Mason and Tony to New York. The White House has just released a transcript of President Trump's July 25th phone call with Ukraine's president.
In that call, the president asked for an investigation of Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden and his son Hunter, who used to be a director of a Ukrainian oil company. A whistleblower report related to that phone call led House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to open a formal impeachment inquiry.
A Justice Department statement this morning mentions the intelligence community's inspector general who investigated the whistleblower complaint. It says in part the inspector general's letter cited a conversation between the president and Ukrainian President Zelensky as a potential violation of federal campaign finance law. Jeff Begay and other reporters were allowed to see the phone call transcript this morning. Jeff, this was a July 25th call. It was about 30 minutes in length. What did you see in that transcript?
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of time with the transcript. We weren't allowed to take it outside of DOJ, but we took some of the inserts. We took notes. This was a 5-page document, and, you know, as you might imagine, it starts out like any other call with a foreign leader would start. There's a congratulations on the election victory, but President Trump did allude to Europe not doing enough to help Ukraine, but then he seems to veer into the DNC server. He mentioned CrowdStrike, which is a company that investigated the Russian hack of the DNC server. And then from there, he progresses to ask the Ukrainian president about Joe Biden. And let me put this quote up on the screen for you to see. This is what the president said, according to the transcript, which, according to senior DOJ officials, is not verbatim, but this is what they have. Quote, the other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. And so that's one excerpt of something the president said to the president Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Now, whether that is an example of a quid pro quo, that's obviously what Democrats are going to be looking into. But it is important to mention that DOJ, senior officials here say that their criminal division took a look at this. They don't believe there were any violations of the law. What is alleged here is that there was a violation of campaign finance laws. But according to senior DOJ officials, they just don't see that in this document. But of course, members of Congress will eventually get this document, and they will have to decide for themselves. And that's why this is important. Again, it was a 5-page document. We didn't have a lot of time to look at it, but we did get some quotes. Let me go through another one, because what we saw throughout the document is this mention of Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney, as well as Attorney General William Barr. And that was surprising, because we knew that Rudy Giuliani would be mentioned in this document, but we did not know that the Attorney General would be mentioned. Here's one excerpt. I will have Mr. Giuliani give you a call, and I'm also going to have Attorney General Barr call, and we will get to the bottom of it. So this is what we have gathered from this document. We're still going through it, but so far, it shows that there was this repeated mention of Rudy Giuliani and also Attorney General Barr. Back to you.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Paula Reed covers the White House for us, and she joins us now. Paula, good morning. It's an extraordinary document. We're all sitting here digesting it kind of on the fly.
Exactly.
It's not a perfect transcript, apparently, more like notes. We should say at the outset that there is no evidence, nothing to substantiate the claims that President Trump made in that call to the Ukrainian president about Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son.
That's right.
It also appears from the notes that there is not what we would call an explicit quid pro quo. If you do this, I'll do this exchange. Does it matter that it's not that explicit?
It does matter legally. We know the president is very good about this. He's very good at putting pressure on people or getting his point across without saying something explicit that in court could be established as extortion or a bribe. We saw this repeatedly in the Russia investigation, the way he would dangle pardons without making an explicit promise. What's so significant to me here is we were looking for exactly how did the president pressure his Ukrainian counterpart in relation to the Biden investigation. And what we see here is he's suggesting that his personal attorney will reach out. He's suggesting the Attorney General of the United States will reach out. And that's where things get a little tricky for President Trump. Because the question is, why would you entangle your attorney general? Why would you entangle yourself in something having to do with a political rival? That's significant. But again, he goes right up to the line. He doesn't make any explicit threat.
We should point out here that the Justice Department says in a statement the president has not spoken with the attorney general about having Ukraine investigate anything relating to former Vice President Biden or his son.
Exactly. So according to this statement, it appears that the president never followed up on this with his attorney general. I want to draw some parallels, though, here with what the attorney general is doing on behalf of the president. We saw with the Mueller report, William Barr came out, he gave a press conference, he released statements before we got to see the report. He helped the president in that he helped sort of put a positive spin on everything that was going to come out. And here we see him doing that again. He's clearing himself. He's trying to get the facts out. But the fact that we have a statement here right now at the same time we have the transcript, it does help the president, because it's like, well, he said this to the Ukrainian leader, but now he can turn around and said, well, I never really talked about it to the attorney general, so clearly I wasn't serious.
But there still is not an explicit quid pro quo here. So
Exactly.
Is this a big bowl of nothing, or is there really something here? What will be the process now to determine how significant this is?
Well, legally, it's important to note that the Justice Department has looked at what happened in this phone call, and they did not clear him on all violations of law, but they said, we don't see a campaign finance violation here, right? So it seems going forward, this will be, like so many other things in the Trump administration, a political fight on Capitol Hill. And it'll be up to Democrats and Republicans to decide if they believe this rises to the level of conduct that should support articles of impeachment. It's an open question. It's murky. I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here. That's great for the president's attorneys. That's what they'll argue. But I think a lot of folks, a lot of voters in the Midwest may ask, why would you, why on earth would you go to a foreign leader to talk about your political rival? Haven't we been through this for 2 years?
But it does seem, depending on your feelings about President Trump, will depend on how you feel about this statement.
Exactly. It's a Rorschach test for how you feel about President Trump.
Exactly right, Paula. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill, where we first learned about this whistleblower complaint. Nancy, so what's the reaction there to this transcript? I know everything is still in flux.
Well, I can tell you, Gail, that even before the transcript came out, Democrats were very skeptical that it was going to be complete, that it would be an exhaustive readout of exactly everything that went down on this call, the exact number of times that the president asked the president of Ukraine to look into the vice president. And so that's why the House Intelligence Chairman, Adam Schiff, told me this morning, even before the transcript was released, that he still wanted to talk to anyone else who was on that call to make sure that the readout reflects the entire conversation that the president had with Zelensky about Biden. But Democrats also argue, and remember that impeachment is a political process, it's not a legal process. Democrats argue that they already have enough evidence to establish that there was a likely quid pro quo here, even if the president wasn't explicit about that on that phone call. Because if you widen out and look at the timeline here, about a week before the president had that conversation with the new president of Ukraine, his first conversation ever with the new president, he suddenly, unexpectedly, withheld about $400 million in military aid to Ukraine. No one outside of his inner circle knew why he was doing it. Even the Senate Majority Leader, Republican Mitch McConnell, was kept in the dark about the reasoning. Then, a week later, while that money is withheld, the president has this conversation with the president of Ukraine, asking him to help him in clearly political ways. And so Democrats say that that shows that the leader of Ukraine knew that his military aid was on the line if he didn't do what the president wanted him to do.
Nancy, Congress has heard from the whistleblower's attorney, but are they going to hear from the whistleblower, and are they going to get a copy of this report?
They are deep in negotiations over that right now, Anthony. The House and Senate Intelligence Committees are hoping to interview this whistleblower as soon as tomorrow and Friday before Congress goes on a 2-week recess. But they are in negotiations with the Director of National Intelligence. He withheld this whistleblower's complaint because there were concerns that the whistleblower was discussing privileged information. If he was willing to withhold the complaint, why would he then allow the whistleblower himself or herself to come to Capitol Hill and tell members of Congress everything? Those are the talks that are going on right now.
All right, Nancy, thank you. CBS News legal analyst Jonathan Turley is with us from Washington. He's a constitutional law professor at George Washington University and has criticized the push towards impeachment. Jonathan, good morning.
Good morning.
Jonathan, you can argue that what the president did is inappropriate. Is it impeachable?
It could be. You know, part of the problem with the past impeachment allegations is there were very strong defenses that could be raised. This one would be an impeachable offense if proven. Self-dealing is something that can constitute a form of public corruption, an abuse of office. And so this is the real McCoy. You just have to prove it. The problem is with this transcript is that there's plenty here that helps the president on his defense. Not only are they a quid short of a pro quo, there's no express promise, but it also contains his initial discussion, that is President Trump's discussion, about why he wants other countries, European countries, to also put money into the Ukraine. Trump is insisting that he withheld that $400 million to try to put pressure on the Europeans to pony up. So the transcript will help him there. But there's also material here that will concern Congress and is a legitimate subject of investigation. You know, there could be a quid pro quo. They just need someone that can connect those dots. And so it's not going to come from this whistleblower, I don't think. The whistleblower apparently heard this third hand. I'm not too sure how he's going to move the ball. It's more likely to come from someone in the inner circle, including someone like John Bolton, who might have access to statements that would support the theory.
You know Attorney General Barr very well. What do you make of his involvement in this? His name is mentioned in the transcript.
I'm not surprised at all that there was no contact with Bill Barr. The chances that Bill Barr would get involved in something like this is roughly the same as the president winning the Nobel Prize. You know, Barr apparently never was told about the call. He was informed that his name came up once the referral was made. And so this is part and parcel of what we've seen before, where the president says things that, quite frankly, are reckless and disturbing, and what follows is crickets. No one does anything. And that seems to be the case here, but Congress has a right to find out if something more concrete was done.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much for being with us. Once again, with the remarks that the president made with the president of Ukraine have been released. We've got our first read of it, details still coming out, but there was, the president did directly raise the question of investigating Vice President Biden with the president of Ukraine. Our coverage will continue on our 24-hour streaming network, CBSN. You can watch it at cbsnews.com or on our CBS News app. There will be more to come on your local news on this CBS station and tonight on the CBS Evening News. Many of you will return now to CBS This Morning. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Anthony Mason with Gayle King and Tony DeCopel, CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.